Okay, so let's talk about some basic concepts and some good old down to earth common sense when it comes to shit hit the fan and getting set up after you've arrived at your bug out location. And for the purposes of this video, I'm doing this video for a poor person, a person that doesn't can't afford and doesn't have a bug out location per se, but who has an idea that he could maybe make it to a national forest, for example. And I know bugging out to a national forest is very controversial. I've discussed it a little bit about it in other videos, but for some people, they just may not have any choice. It's the only where they can go. They can't stay in shelter in place and they have to leave. So, let's talk about firstly the difference between survival, primitive living, and homesteading. Because these are the three stages that you're going to have to go through if you want to survive long term. And the first is like survival. So you've arrived at a location like this one where this is being filmed, the National Forest. And now initially you just want to survive for a couple of weeks and get set up. Say you have a motor home or maybe a four-wheel drive and you have tents or whatever it is, but you do have some comforts and some um, modern gear and some food and water and something just to bridge you until you can get into primitive living, which is hunter-gatherer type of lifestyle where you're shooting the game and processing it and storing it for later on. And it's the same thing with medicinal herbs and plants where you're gathering them and processing them and drying them or canning them for later on. And then the final step after you've transitioned from primitive living is to homesteading. And that's going to be dependent on your location. Some people will choose a location where they can farm. So they're going to bring seeds, fertilizer, pesticides, and certain things to help get them set up at first. And then they're going to have to transition into organic gardening and a old-fashioned homesteading lifestyle. Other people are their homestead may be at higher elevations, shorter growing season. They may just have to focus more on raising some type of livestock. Maybe that they could catch some livestock that's roaming free and start raising that, or domesticate some something and start raising that like ancient peoples did, and continue to hunt and gather. Now, it's true. Game is going to become scarce, but for a good hunter and a good trapper, it's not impossible to stay alive when other people are starving. I know this to be a fact because I have kinfolk that survived the Great Depression during the height of the Great Depression when other people couldn't catch fish and other people couldn't hunt game. Their skills and their determination and their endurance and their ability to climb up to the highest parts of the mountains and harvest game and bring it back enabled them to supplement their homesteading activity. So that's the three basic things: survival, getting set up, primitive living, and homesteading. So let's talk about some commonalities of what you need in order to sustain yourself for all three. The first thing you really need is a positive attitude. And that's going to become very important, especially if you're suffering hardships and adversity. You want to keep your morale up. It's just for obvious reasons, and there's been a lot written on the subject, and so that's one thing that you're going to want. And of course you're going to want food, water, clothing, fire, fire starting materials, all these things. And the more that you can bring, the better. The rule of thumb is the more skills you have, the less you need. But I say the more that you have, say like if you have the skills to collect firewood, you can have all the skill you want, but if I have a chainsaw and I know how to use it, and you don't, well, guess who's going to get a lot of firewood within 1 week, and guess who's going to be collecting firewood all winter to try to keep themselves warm? The guy with the chainsaw, even if the chainsaw becomes obsolete because you don't have gas or whatever, if you have it initially and you have gas, it can help bridge and get you started. The same thing with a comfortable bed, the same thing with food, the same thing with anything to do with survival. Even if the modern gear that you bring with you goes out of date, at least it can help bridge you so you can adapt, acclimatize, and harden your body off for the rigorous life that you're about to live. So you want also things for navigation, and I've covered that before. You want to learn how to determine what the weather's going to be. That's very important to keep your core body temperature regulated. You know, if you go out and you don't know with light clothing, you don't know it's going to rain, and you get caught far from camp, you could be in trouble. You could get hypothermia. And same thing if it's going to be too hot, you could get hyperthermia, and that could cause you a big problem. So knowing the weather is really important. You want to have good communication skills. You want to understand how to at least use a CB, walkie-talkies. It'd be good if you could use a ham radio as well. You want medical supplies, of course, and then you want books on your area that you're going to bug out to about medicinal medicine and natural medicines, and that would be really important as well. The final thing I want to emphasize in this video is the necessity of good sleep. I've been a professional hunting guide, I've been a professional trapper, I've taught people how to fish, I've camped, I've bushcraft all my life, and I've seen a lot of tenderfoots come out and they don't get good sleep and it ruins their whole trip. Okay, and it's one thing if you come out and your hunting trip is ruined. It's another thing if the shit hits the fan and you're coming out somewhere for good and you can't get sleep, and then you suffer from exhaustion and you can't go back home. That could spiral you into a situation where, you know, your survival, your very life is at stake. So if you have a motorhome at first and you can get out of the city early, you see it coming, get out of the city and you have a motorhome and all the supplies you need, I say good for you. Because then you're going to be able to transition from your motorhome into a more primitive lifestyle. And don't wait to transition, you know, when all your propane is used up and your food and everything else. Start transitioning immediately. Then if you lose a few nights sleep, go back to the motorhome in your comfortable bed. You know, don't sleep on the ground or in a survival hammock. Go back in the motorhome and slowly get used to everything step by step. And that's my advice, is when you make your plan and when you arrive at your bug out location, get adequate rest, good sleep, and transition into your new lifestyle if that's all possible. There's a lot more to it. Granted, you know, this is under a 10-minute video and I can't cover everything, but my videos are like pieces to a puzzle. If you watch them, you're going to eventually piece together a great strategy of your own, and you're going to start getting the idea of what is best for you and how to survive. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you later.